There is no way to change the past by traveling back in time. That would become clear to this LA Dodger in due time. Despite having a difficult childhood, he was able to create a successful life for himself. Everyone who knew him believed he was a brand new individual who had forgotten everything about his background. He had reached the summit of LA more quickly than he would have anticipated and had come upon numerous surprises along the way. However, it was nothing compared to what he would soon experience after meeting a mystery homeless man. Jimmy held the entire globe in the palm of his hand in 2021. This 22-year-old Los Angeles native, who had spent his whole childhood playing baseball and was now a prospect for the LA Dodgers' first team, was born and bred in the city. He was at the height of his professional success and a beloved and respected member of his community. He was expected to advance in his career to even greater heights by everyone in the city. However, Jimmy's life wasn't always so upbeat and joyous. The reality was that Jimmy's past had very little to do with his existence as a baseball star, which few people were aware of. His upbringing had not been a bed of roses. His parents had left him at the door of an orphanage in Los Angeles. Nothing in his background could have foreseen what would happen to him in the future, giving him every opportunity to end up as simply another statistic. He never learned his parents' identities or the reasons they abandoned him when he was a child. It's reasonable to assume that this had a significant influence on Jimmy's personality development and that it permanently changed the course of his life. Jimmy's circumstances would, however, change for the better at one time during his boyhood, though it would only last for a short while. Jimmy had the good fortune to be adopted by two foster parents who lived in Pomona, a town close to Los Angeles. Everyone got along, and the house was calm and loving. It served as a kind of safe refuge for Jimmy's up until now difficult childhood. Even still, not everything was flawless. The family has its own issues to deal with. Jimmy's foster family, however, was not just incredibly poor despite being incredibly affectionate. They formerly struggled to pay their landlord since they couldn't even make ends meet. They were kicked out and made homeless for a while. The only thing that seemed to be able to assist Jimmy get by at the time was what Jimmy eventually turned to. Jimmy only afterwards realized how much he loved baseball. He would live with this desire the rest of his days. He spent his days playing baseball with neighborhood youngsters, despite his family's inability to pay for a team membership. One of those days, a certain person was drawn to him because of his abilities, strength, and brash personality. Jimmy's skills were noticed by a well-known local figure who also served as a scout for one of the city's amateur teams. The youngster appeared to be born with a genius pitching intelligence. One day, after one of Jimmy's street games, this man approached him. They had a conversation right there and then that would forever alter Jimmy's life. Jimmy was questioned by the scout about his name, how long he had been playing baseball, and whether he was now a member of any local teams. Jimmy was honest with him when he said that he had only been playing on the streets for approximately a year. He had never been a member of a team because his family couldn't pay the registration cost. The scouter tried to go deeper into Jimmy's life with a few more thoughtful questions to learn more about his past and present circumstances. Jimmy told him everything without hesitation. He explained to him his orphanage upbringing, adoption by a family, and subsequent eviction from his home. He revealed to him that he was now residing in a homeless shelter with his foster parents. The scout was touched by Jimmy's tale and his baseball prowess. He realized he had to act for the child right then and there. He was fortunate to have many connections with many of the clubs in the area. He then set his plan into motion after once more complimenting his abilities and wishing him a happy day. He got in touch with the relevant individuals, made a few calls, and met up for lunch with a few folks. Just a few weeks later, he returned to the same location where he had first encountered Jimmy. The youngster was present, and after he and his friends finished their game, the scout approached Jimmy and broke the good news that he had been accepted into one of the neighborhood groups. Jimmy quickly advanced from the levels of amateur teams to the professional leagues after that. The LA Dodgers intervened and made him an offer to join the team's youth division. Jimmy agreed, began receiving large salaries, and removed himself and his family from homelessness. However, these weren't the only things Jimmy's fate had planned for him. It didn't take long for him to begin getting looked at for the Dodgers' starting lineup. Fame and fortune followed that. The young man's way of life changed drastically. Jimmy rose to fame more quickly than anyone had ever seen, from the Pomona streets to the professional leagues. He occasionally struggled to believe it himself. He occasionally had visions in which he was back with his foster family in the old homeless shelter in Pomona. When he used to wake up, he would briefly believe that his dream was indeed his reality. He briefly believed that his baseball career and ascent to the professional levels had been a dream or a daydream when this occurred. Then, when he was leaving for training, he realized it wasn't. He believed that these dreams were hiding something, though. Jimmy was unable to forget the days he had to spend at the homeless shelter and on the streets of Pomona, no matter how different his life and the life of his foster family were today. Jimmy believed that the cosmos was speaking to him through those frequent nightmares, urging him to remember his origins. He thus made the decision to act. Jimmy wanted to arrange a charity event for the city's homeless after rising from the bottom because he and his foster parents had once lived among them. Many of the homeless persons in LA were housed at an abandoned warehouse in the city. He made the choice to have the warehouse workers as the event's principal attendees. Jimmy, however, was told that one strange person resided in the warehouse along with the other residents. Jimmy learned that Marcus was one of the residents of the warehouse. Marcus was a well-known Los Angeles street artist who lived on the streets as a homeless person. His work was out of the ordinary, and some even thought it was eerie. It had an unsettling yet strangely hypnotic energy about it, and yet it had captured the attention of many. Marcus had managed to amass a respectable income and establish himself as a well-known figure thanks to his enigmatic paintings and a loyal audience. He was among the most affluent homeless people in LA. Some even said that he had enough money to pay for a studio apartment, leave the streets, and support himself as an artist. But he continued to reside in the warehouse. Yet why? Marcus's motivations and other aspects of his personal life were mostly unknown. His past was also a mystery. No one had ever attempted to steal anything from him despite his fame and fortune among the homeless. He was revered and admired by everyone. His persona had taken on a legendary quality that made him the focus of many myths and tales. According to others, Marcus was formerly a wealthy who had become disgraced. Others thought he was a wanted felon on the run. He might possibly be a war criminal on the run or a bankrupt member of some European royalty. Because Marcus was such a divisive personality, some individuals in Jimmy's network were hesitant to get in touch with him for the charity event. Jimmy, though, didn't perceive any cause for alarm. Jimmy believed that it was rare to take these rumors seriously. Nobody could possibly have negative things to say about Marcus. Sure, he was a reclusive and mysterious guy, but it didn't make him a danger to others. Or at least he believed that. Jimmy decided to attempt working with Marcus and sell some of his paintings at the charity event after growing fond of his artwork. He thus made contact with him and awaited a reply. Marcus concurred. However, he wasn't anticipated to attend the function after the discussions with Jimmy's representatives. The man was known for having an elusive demeanor, and some people thought he had an odd character. In addition, he hadn't indicated any desire to attend the occasion. The only topic of communication he had with Jimmy's representatives was the subject of his paintings. But he abruptly altered his mind, keeping it a secret from everyone. Jimmy was running late for his own party on the big day. Marcus was also on his way to the party, although he was unaware of it. At the height of the celebration, Jimmy arrived at the location. Marcus's paintings were selling like cupcakes while the guests were having a good time. It made Jimmy happy to see this. But after exchanging handshakes with a few people, he looked someone in the eyes. Standing in front of a mesmerized audience, he saw Marcus. Marcus gave him a long, sideways glance. Jimmy had a sudden insight as he studied Marcus's face and features while staring into his eyes. Jimmy was suddenly overcome by a strong sense of familiarity and amazement. He continued to stare at him for a short while paralyzed. He was in shock at what he saw. That man was someone he knew. All of a sudden, he recognized Marcus. The first person to devote himself to fostering Jimmy's enthusiasm and offer him his guidance when he was just a street boy, Marcus was none other than his first coach. He was the one who was responsible for Jimmy's quick ascent to success. Marcus had seen it from a distance, but his experience hadn't been good. Marcus had earned a bad reputation. He had lost his home, job, and girlfriend. He had given up instructing baseball. He ended himself living on the streets and discovered a passion for painting. Traumatized, he refused to discuss his background with any of his fellow homeless people. Marcus was initially unable to identify Jimmy. But after a brief exchange, he remembered their shared history with clarity. Both the pupil and the teacher hugged each other while crying. At that point, Jimmy asked Marcus a query. Marcus was questioned by Jimmy about returning to baseball teaching. Jimmy had many connections thanks to his position, which would make it simpler for Marcus to find employment as a coach for a reputable team and get off the streets. However, Marcus turned down Jimmy's offer while still crying. Marcus argued that he was content living on the streets. He was passionate about art, liked his warehouse fellows, and wasn't interested in money and success. He only urged Jimmy to keep his word and use the funds raised by the event to somewhat improve the lives of the homeless people in Los Angeles. And indeed, that is what took place. Marcus made a lot of money with the paintings he shared with his people from the warehouse, and the charity event was a success. Jimmy contributed all the money collected from the event to the commune's upkeep and other homeless persons in Los Angeles. And Marcus continued to give all of himself to his craft, as he had intended.